I'm Tyrone Keys. Welcome to the Wealth Hustle Live. We've got an incredible show lined up for you. How not to become old, sick, and broke. Grab a family member, sit down. We'll be right back. We've got an epidemic in this country right now of seniors who are either moving toward retirement or in retirement. And not only are they broke, but look, we're humans. The body is a machine. And as we get older, most of the time we encounter some health issues. Healthcare in the country, in the world, is expensive. Let me give you an example. When you think about America and how, our healthcare finance system does have some challenges that we need to address. Chief among them, the cost. But I was reading just yesterday that in Russia, in Egypt, and in certain countries in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Saudi Arabia, if you can't pay your bill and you've been admitted to the hospital, they keep you. It's basically a form of imprisonment. And so we're not that bad here in America. However, healthcare is an expense. And as you age, you've got to be able to care for these expenses. You've got to understand what the government will pay for with Medicare, Medicaid, and what you will be responsible for paying for, and how that will impact you financially. So, as we're talking about how not to become old, sick, and broke, you would not believe what the median savings is for the average American heading toward retirement.
Well, welcome back. Get this. A new study claims that over 60% of baby boomers are actually more concerned about running out of money during retirement than they are of dying. This comes after an Economic Policy Institute report showed that for workers near retirement age, the median amount of savings is just $17,000.
$17,000. That's really scary. Now, when she talks about the median, what she means is half of the people have more than 17,000 and half have less than 17,000 saved for retirement. So when we talk about half having more, we could be talking about somebody with $17,500. And when we talk about less, then you get the picture. So you can start to get a feel for the nature and the magnitude of this crisis. How are you going to live off of $17,000 a year? You're not, okay? It's just existence costs more than that for a year. So some people will say, you know what? Social Security. Social Security's got me well in hand. I don't have to worry about anything because I've worked, I've paid into the system, and it's going to be all good. Well, I wouldn't be so quick to take that approach. For one thing, Social Security, when it was initially set up, it did not intend to support a retiree for 30 years. Now, what I mean by that is what has happened is lifespans have increased since the inception of Social Security. So now, a person who retires at the age of 65 may have 30 years in retirement because of the increase in lifespans. Now, during that 30 years, a lot's going to happen. You're going to have to pay for housing. Person's going to have to, of course, pay for food, clothing, all that good stuff. And again, you're going to have to pay for some aspect of health care. So you can see how the dollars start adding up. Now, the other issue with Social Security, in addition to it never being intended to support a retiree for 30 years, there is also some question as to the solvency or the ability of Social Security to be maintained. So when we talk about that, we've really got to start asking ourselves, is Social Security something that we can literally bank on?
Trustees for Social Security and Medicare announcing that the two programs will run out of money, and soon Medicare's Hospital Insurance Trust Fund will be empty in less than 12 years in the year 2029. Now, the good news is it goes broke a year later than previously anticipated, 2028. Social Security's Retirement and Disability Benefits Trust Fund will run out of money in 17 years, paying benefits through 2034.
You see, you can't really bank on Social Security. It's probably not a very good idea. And are you willing to bet your future on Social Security, knowing what you know now? Okay, looking at the insolvency of the system. So what's going to happen for a certain group of people is the retirement age to receive Social Security is going to have to be increased. I'm in the generation where I believe that may happen for me. I'm really not banking on Social Security. The other thing is there may be benefit cuts. Now, politicians, they will not address this. You don't hear a ton about it in the media, but it's a real crisis that is going to affect retirees, and someday you will be one of those. Now, when I made this idea to, start the wealth hustle and to start talking about these issues and to start putting economic literacy out there for people to consume, it was because I am familiar, as are we all, with people who have just not been able to do the right thing with money for whatever reason. And it ends them up in a circumstance that is very, very sad oftentimes. So in doing the production for this particular episode, I ran across the following story that really tugged at my heartstrings and really gave me the, second wind to just come at people with this information, because what you're about to see is one of the saddest stories about a lack of preparation, financial preparation, that I've ever seen.
Reminiscing about days gone by.
It's very glamorous.
It was wonderful. We walked home back through the streets of Paris in the middle of the night. It was fun.
Life for 77-year-old Mary McGrory used to be a glamorous affair, but for the last 3 years she's been living alone on the streets of Miami in her van.
The porta potty should go under there, but I have to have a carpenter arrange that, do it for me.
We're first going to serve the handicap and then everybody else by number.
Like thousands of seniors in South Florida, Mary depends on handouts from churches and charities. She receives a few $100s a month in social welfare payments, but it's not enough for a safe place to live.
I sold my house because I couldn't pay the taxes, pay the gardener, pay everything. My mother did. But when she passed on and gave me her house, I began to realize that I couldn't afford it.
At one of Florida's biggest food banks, the problems of North America's elderly population are all too familiar.
You have to pay your rent, you have to pay your medical bills, you have to pay your utilities, and somehow, some way, you have to put food on the table. There's really not a lot of programs to help them in their golden years.
It's thought that about 1 in 7 seniors in the United States struggles on a daily basis, but getting hold of food isn't their only challenge. Increasingly, it's the rising cost of medical care that is forcing more and more people into poverty. Mary tells us she can't even afford basic medication, despite the fact she has skin cancer. And living like this isn't helping her chances of moving on.
I want to get into an apartment, but a friend of mine pointed out to me that if I have to be decontaminated, and my dog, before we even go in the apartment. All my stuff has to be de-ticked.
Mary faces an uneasy future, but it's one that many in her generation are now being forced to deal with.
Now, do you think she ever thought, when she was younger, she would be in that situation today, in her 70s? It's truly, truly sad. So what we have to start thinking about is retirement in terms of not just an age, but a dollar amount. Because again, chances are you're going to have 30 years in retirement. How is that going to look? So there used to be a paradigm where people would look at retirement and say, I'm going to come out of this company in 30 years. I'll be 65 years old or whatever, and I'm going to retire. No longer is that a proper formula or a proper way to look at it. You've got to look at your retirement account nest egg, find out how much money you've got in there, think reasonably and conservatively about how long you're going to live, and then that's the equation that you need to use to come up with when you're able to retire. So we've talked about the downside of a lack of preparation. One of our viewers, Phyllis, she asked me, she said, you need to talk about ways that people who have heretofore not prepared for retirement can go about doing so. How can they make it happen if it hasn't been a priority for them in the past? So we've talked about the reasons why you need to do it. Now let's talk about how to do it. Okay, so we're going to break this up in two different bite-sized segments. Number one, we're going to talk about how you can actually go about creating the nest egg. Okay, now depending on how old you are, this needs to happen like yesterday, and you need to buckle down and put away as much as you can. Reason being, you want as much money working for you as possible as you near retirement. Okay, so what you're doing when you're investing or you're socking away this money in a retirement plan is you're creating another entity that's going to get up and go to work for you every morning. Okay, every morning that the markets are open. So think about it like that. And even if you're young, you have an incredible opportunity to really make sure that you have just an incredibly comfortable retirement. So two things: urgency in terms of time and a focus on being disciplined and putting as much as you can away. So let's go over 6 different ways that you can make this happen. Now, you need to combine all 6 of these. And then after we do that, we're going to focus on some healthcare issues because that can be a really costly affair. Number 1, open a retirement account today. If you are fortunate enough to work for an employee or an employer who has a 401k or a 403b and they do any kind of matching, then maximize your contribution so that you get the full match from the employer. Doing anything other than that does not make any financial sense. Now, here's why. If someone comes to you and says, for every dollar that you put into a bucket, this bucket is for you, but for every dollar you put in there, I'm going to put in 30 cents. Who would not want to get free money? So that's basically what you're doing when you're contributing to an employer retirement plan that matches. So contribute up to the full max. Now, for the year 2018, the IRS says that the maximum you can sock away into a 401k is $18,500. If you're able to do that, do it. The older you are, especially, the more urgent need you have to maximize the amount of money you put away. After you've done that, then you want to open an IRA. And you want to use that strategy as well to help you, again, sock away this money. Now, it's important to remember that if you're getting trepidatious about, wow, this sounds like a lot of money going into savings, remember, it's going in there for you, number 1, and number 2, the money's still yours. It's just not being spent frivolously, and it's creating that entity. It's making that entity stronger and stronger that's going out and working for you, because one day you want that entity to be the only one working. You don't want to be out there working. You want the entity to be out there working for you. So maximize your employer plans that you have out there to get the full match, and then open an IRA. Point number 2, don't get risky. Don't try to play the market and go out and be a gambler at retirement savings. remember, this is money that you're going to need to live off of. So take a page out of Warren Buffett's book. He is, while very wealthy, while a very wealthy investor, he is not a gambler. He invests judiciously and for the long term. So he's not in and out of the market, which brings us to our next point, number 3. Don't try to be a market timer. Market timing is when you think it's cool to, okay, the market's at its height, I'm going to sell, and then the market's at its low point, I'm going to buy. Invariably, you're going to be wrong. And you're also going to hurt yourself with regard to dollar cost averaging. Now, what dollar cost averaging is when you purchase shares in a mutual fund or a stock over a period of time, and you do it regularly, you're evening out the rough spots, the highs and the lows, when you have a defined and scheduled method of investing. So don't be a market timer, because market timing, now, sure, there are organizations that do it, but they spend billions of dollars in sophisticated computer programs to get it right. You are saving for retirement, and you don't want to take a risk on having that money evaporate because you thought you were a market timer. Number 4, build an emergency fund. Now, the reason why you're doing this is so that you won't have to dip into your retirement accounts. So build an emergency fund, go through, calculate what it would take for you to pay all of your bills over a 3-month period. And while it may take you a while, that's fine. Start putting away a nest egg that can care for that. So if you have an unforeseen happenstance, like maybe you're laid off, maybe you are disabled, and so your disability insurance kicks in, and that's not enough to, pay all the bills and continue to save. What you don't want to do is you don't want to take money out of a retirement account, because number 1, you're going to hamper your ability to build that wealth for retirement, and you're also going to get hit with taxes and fees. And so that's going to put you behind the 8 ball. So wherever possible, don't touch that money. Forget about it. That's why you want to create the emergency fund. And next up, and this is number 5, next to the last, but this is an important one. Most people don't think about getting insured. Now, the reason why you want to get insured is kind of similar to building the emergency fund. Is life. Things happen. And if you're with a partner and you're responsible for the financial well-being of the family, while you're saving, great, because you're saving for, again, turning 95 at some point. You're saving for longevity. You're basically slowly buying your wealth. Insurance allows you to rent your wealth so that if something occurs, the family can live on. They will not have to be out of pocket. They can choose to stay in the home if they want. They'll have the power of options. So get insured. And when I talk about insurance also, you also want to consider long-term health care insurance. The reason for that will become very clear as we talk about the health piece in a moment. But long-term health care insurance helps you defray some of those health care costs that are going to more than likely present themselves as you get older. Now, finally, the last point on how you can build up this nest egg and how you can accelerate your retirement savings and really get in good stead is the old side hustle. Figure out what are some things that you can do for no more than 5 to 10 hours a week that are going to bring in some money that you can allocate specifically to your savings. There are many, many things out there. There are more things out there today than there have ever been. You don't necessarily have to have a part-time job. Maybe you can sell something. Maybe you're good at creating something and you can sell it. They've got Uber and Lyft out there. They've got this thing where you can actually sell products through Amazon called affiliate marketing. There are many, many options for you to be able to spend a minimum amount of time and get some return from it that you can help sock away extra money, especially if you're older. If you're in your 40s, you might want to really think about doing this because it will accelerate your ability to save. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is healthcare. Again, as you get older, health issues start to present themselves. The body's a machine. It happens. So even the healthiest among us, if they've observed good practices like exercise and diet, they're still going to inevitably run into something. And even if you don't, it's still good to be prepared in case you do. So we looked at this Genworth study, and they put together some numbers on exactly how much it costs to have long-term care, for example, in the United States today. So if you're a senior and you're looking at possibly having to stay in a long-term care facility, on average, that's going to cost you about $83,000 a year, on average, which means that some places are less than that and some places are a lot more than that. So if you want to, I think somebody's calling me about long-term care insurance. I'll talk to them later. But anyway, if you want to get a feel for exactly the magnitude of healthcare-related expenses, I'm going to include a link for you in the description of the video so that you can drill down on that. This is something that is costing more and more and more every single year. And you've got $83,000 a year for long-term care, and that's in a facility that will take care of you if you've gotten sick. That's not talking about the retirement home where you can play bingo and shuffleboard and mix and mingle with your friends in the best case scenario health-wise. Those facilities cost on average about $260 a day. That adds up. So how are you going to defray these costs? Some people say, hey, I got kids. They're going to take care of me. Well, maybe. Maybe not. Your kids might decide that they have their own lives and they want to do something a little different. And so what you should do is probably have a nest egg set aside so that you don't have to worry about that. So the other thing with regard to health care is Medicaid, Medicare, those are entitlement programs that are quickly, they're broke pretty much. I mean, if you look at the data, we're well beyond the point of being able to afford that. So you can probably anticipate or should prepare for some changes to those programs as time goes on. So if you're in your 20s, I would not be banking on Medicare and Medicaid. Probably not a safe bet. At the end of the day, my grandmother used to say, Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that has his own. So that's what this whole episode has been about, having your own. And the way you do that is to prepare. There was the Aesop fable about the ants and the grasshopper. And I watched that with my nephew a few days ago. And it's so apropos for this discussion because when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're not thinking about these issues. But you should be because winter is coming and you can't stop it. And do you want to be, they had a nice cartoon I was watching with my nephew, and the ants, they retreated to their, colony underground, and they were eating and they were happy and they were singing. And the poor grasshopper, he had played around all summer, hadn't saved anything. And he eventually turned from green to blue. Now, this was a very PC comic that I was watching with him. And so the ants kindly brought him in to the ant colony. They fed him some soup, and he was okay. That's not going to happen in real life. So you've got to prepare. So again, if you have any questions about anything dealing with the subject matter we've talked about today, please send us a comment. We'd love to hear from you on things that you'd like for us to cover and talk about. When you're young, being broke is a character builder. When you're older, being broke can be a very, very sad situation. I don't want anyone under the sound of my voice to have to go through that. And that's why we created the Wealth Hustle. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this program. And again, subscribe to the channel and send us any questions that you may have. Send this video to a friend who needs to hear this. Send it to an enemy. They won't be your enemy anymore. Thanks for watching The Wealth Hustle, and I want you to play to prosper.